Hello and welcome to So Many Questions. Today on the show we have Jonny Hoffner, who is the proprietor of Paper Antler Photography and Good Lion Golf, which makes golf apparel. Great conversation with him today. Really excited to share it with you. Please take a moment, like, subscribe, do all of those types of things. If you have any questions for us, so many questions show@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. Enjoy the conversation. Do you have any questions before we get rolling?
No, I love that you're doing it. I appreciate you thinking of me. And I looked and saw some of the other episodes you've done, and you've got a great collection of guests and things that you're covering.
Well, adding to that today, so
Hey,
excited to do so.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, initially you popped into my head when I was playing 2K PGA, whatever that video game is called, and I was like, man, there should be some Good Lion stuff in the store here for people to put on their little video game avatars. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
work on that,
disagree,
huh?
Kendall. I don't disagree. My dog, Dr. Spaceman, might be popping in and out of frame. So
Okay,
I don't know if
cool.
did you ever watch 30 Rock?
Briefly, like vague, like yes, but not like super. I wasn't super into it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, his name is Dr. Spaceman after one of the characters, but we call him Spaceman because it's usually confusing to people. And everybody thinks our kids
Got it.
named him, and we're like, no, that was us.
Yeah. No.
Like,
Those were the adults.
yep,
Yeah.
those are the adults in the room.
Jonny, thanks for coming on the show.
Mm.
Maybe give us a little bit of a view of who you are, where you are. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, Kendall, thank you for having me. I'm Jonny Hoffner. I live in Madison. My wife and I have been photographers basically since graduating college. So, I was a philosophy major, which is a fast path to unemployment. And so I quickly found myself being an understudy in Minneapolis with a couple photographers there, and was able to use that experience to kind of find a path and hustle into the wedding photography market in Minneapolis. And so when my wife and I got engaged, gosh, that's now 2007, we haven't had, I guess, proper employment since then. So both of us are full-time artists, photographers. And then in the last few years, I guess it goes back 5 years in inception, and then 4 years since we launched, I've been doing golf clubbing as well.
So, with the philosophy degree and history or some work experience in photography, what was the decision to pursue wedding photography specifically?
Great question. So I'm old enough that all of my work, even in college, because I was a film photography minor, it was all black and white film camera work in the darkroom. And after graduating, I naively thought, oh, I'll just take black and white photos and sell them. And that's what you do as a photographer. And quickly found through working with a few galleries there that the gallery route wasn't exactly for me, that there are a lot of complicated factors that go into being a gallery artist, that's what you rely on. So then I started just casting a wide net of what do photography jobs look like? Are there just like photography jobs? So I actually almost accidentally got hired by the Minneapolis Police Department because they had a photographer position, and a guy interviewed me and he's like, so how do you do with like crime scenes? I was like, terribly. Like, I've never seen one, and I don't really want to, and I don't like violence or blood. So anyway, I basically then just pivoted, and it was through Craigslist I found two photographers that were looking for assistance. And one of my professors in college, he gave one of the better bits of advice where he said, find somebody who's doing what you want to be doing and study under them. So I thought, I'll just learn under these two guys and see how they do it as a profession. And after studying and working under them for probably as close to 6 months, I then was able to put together a portfolio. They both just happened to shoot weddings. I didn't have an intention of weddings being the direction, but actually really enjoyed the interpersonal dynamic of it. you have very little control of most everything. And I actually really liked that from a creative standpoint because you have to adapt and work on the fly. And then it allowed us space for my wife and I to be able to work together. So we've been, yeah, we sort of, I don't want to say fell into it because I wanted to do something with photography from a young age. I at one point thought being an art therapist would be the direction. And then as things happen, you kind of slowly walk through each door and then all of a sudden find yourself in a room that you maybe never would have imagined.
And your wife, you have been doing it with your wife the whole time that you've been doing wedding photography. Was she also doing work with the people that you were working with, or was it totally separate, or how did that collaboration come together?
Yeah, so she studied international relations, and when we both graduated, I was working on a ranch in Colorado. She was set to go to Sudan. Both things kind of had their ways in which they fell apart. And I ended up moving in with my brother in Minneapolis. She moved up later with her college roommate. And then as I was kind of starting the work with photography, she would come along on shoots and she has a natural eye and way with people and sees things in a way that's different than me and better than me and has her own kind of worldview and perspective with it. So we got engaged and then both quit our jobs. So that was kind of I don't know if it was an alarm to our families. It was in hindsight, imagining my kids doing something like this. But yeah, so we've been both of us full time basically since we got engaged.
And then the creative aspects of it, you mentioned the constraints that doing live event photography, specifically weddings, which are very obviously fraught with emotion and,
Yeah.
intensity and those types of things. What did that kind of what constraints did that introduce into your creative process?
Yeah, so we a lot of times the location is a place we haven't been. So right out of the gate, you have a new setting, a new environment. We have very little control over light, no control over weather. The people, like our clients, generally are not models and may not even like having their photo taken. And then you have all the other dynamics of perhaps they're a little stressed, perhaps they're a little nervous, or they have some anxiousness about whatever it is. And so that was actually one of the things that I then liked is it became much more so about the interpersonal dynamic and relationship of like we are having to set them at ease and we might have 10 minutes with them, we might have 2 hours with them. And every client is totally different. Those are some of the constraints. And then we apply some of our own constraints to ourselves with the equipment we use. So we largely are prime fixed focal length. We went like 12 years without bringing a flash or any kind of light to events because it's like whatever's happening, we're going to capture it how it is to try to apply some of those darkroom film techniques to digital because we shoot digital, but don't want to get into the like hyper realistic. I don't know where
Right.
everything's look like an avatar.
And so you've been doing that for 17 years, did you say?
Yeah, yeah.
So over that time, obviously, when you practice a craft for that long, your skills improve. What is it that you've found that you've gotten better at? And then what have you found is still super challenging?
I would say for the first 5 to 10 years, I felt physically ill before every wedding. Like I felt the weight and the heft of the importance of the photos, and that is probably self-aggrandizing and saying these photos are going to rock their world and mean the most of anything to them. And they do carry a lot of significance. And we would see as years went on, all sorts of unforeseen circumstances would occur after a wedding where it'd be like a person would pass away, a person would be ill, different situations would emerge. And so those photos hold a significance immediately. And then in theory, they kind of grow in significance as they age. So for a long while, I would say one of my weaknesses. It could be a weakness or a strength, who's to say, but was kind of the way in which I felt the responsibility to the point that it would almost make me ill. I now do feel a bit, I've hopefully shifted a lot of that focus toward client experience and remove some of that pressure from myself. It's obviously like whether I'm taking a photo of the family or of the landscape or of even a flower, in my mind, every single time I'm like, this will be the greatest photo ever taken. And if it's not what I'm
Yeah.
doing. And again, that's not to say it is the greatest photo, but the goal is always to deliver the best thing possible while also delivering the best experience.
Yeah. And what have you like, because you mentioned art therapy being a potential
Yeah.
pursuit of yours. It almost feels like, just in the way you're talking about it, that you kind of do that in a way. Like there feels like that interpersonal connection, and that kind of, like you said, putting them at ease and things like that.
Yeah.
What has what have you learned about yourself as you have gone through the process of being that kind of, I mean, almost adult in the room at a wedding, like, but just kind of like this steady,
Yeah.
you're there, you're the professional, you know what you're doing. How has that like affected you? How have you learned and grown about yourself?
These are great questions, Kendall. You're good at this. I
Thank
see
you.
why you have a podcast. Um, that's maybe the thing that I learned or have continued to learn because it's ever a process and an evolution is that we get to set the tone in most of these situations. So they're reading us as much as we're reading them. And as a parent now, we have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. You see this where you're the thermostat of the household in a lot of ways. So you have a choice. What are you focusing on? What's your temperament? And as much as you're able to impact and affect that. And so when we're taking photos, Michelle and I, my wife's name is Michelle, we one time were able to go to this event and we were actually the subjects for a bunch of photographers taking pictures of us. And it was fascinating the different approaches that people would take where they're like, hey, Johnny and Michelle, go stand in the corner and act natural. It's like the least natural thing in the world is to be told to go stand in the corner and do that. And then some other people would just be kind of like actively manipulating your face and like physically touching you as like, I don't want that either. And then as they're taking photos, I don't like being in front of the camera at all. Like I do not really like my photo being taken. And so having just even small bits of encouragement of like from us to our client or to our subject of just affirming them, encouraging them, looking for like enthusiasm and encouragement is probably the biggest one. And that's from a truly genuine place of like, I get super excited when things are clipping and flowing. And so it's not this put on performance, and hopefully the subject and client feels that as well.
So you've traveled through this process of building a business. Maybe can you talk a little bit about the less the creative side of things and more like the, hey, I got to try and make a living. I have a family. Like, what does that feel like when you're doing creative things, when you're trying to also make a living and build a business?
Stressful. It is stressful. Different seasons and different years have been stressful and difficult for different reasons. So when COVID hit, all of our work for a year was just wiped out in 2 weeks because it became illegal to have group gatherings and be inside. That was hard because it's not like one of us is a neurosurgeon as a failsafe where we're, well, people are always going to need brain surgery. Is like, no, we both keep food on the table and the lights on with photography. Good Lion kind of keeps drinks on the table, but like this all functions because of Paper Antler, which is our photography name. So yeah, I would say, and we're kind of we're accustomed to making most of our income in about 6 months, and then we have a number of months in the year where it could be nothing. And for us, it's all we've known. So I don't know what it's like to have a paycheck every 2 weeks, or how normal people get paid, or how normal people have insurance or go to the dentist. For the first number of years, our dental policy was Groupon, which I do not recommend for anybody. It seems like a good idea, but when we go to the dentist, we're like, "Oh, you $40 cleaning, it's awesome," and then they'd be like, "You have 75 cavities. Be like, I don't even have 7 teeth. And then once we later had proper plans in place, they're like, no, you're good. So I'd say the stressors shift once a home comes into the picture and kids come into the picture, all of that focus sharpens, to drop some photography metaphors. Like that
Yeah.
all becomes a bit more of a real deal thing as opposed to, oh, this is a fun way for us to travel and meet new people and do something we enjoy. So yeah, I feel that now we're like, we know our schedule generally 6 to 18 months out. And I truly don't know if things like went super sideways, what either of us would do. And I say that less from a fearful standpoint, though that's present, but from a genuine gratitude standpoint as well, that for the last 18 years, I feel like we've both been able to pull a little bit of an adult hack where we are with our family a lot, we're home a lot, we've gotten to travel and meet all sorts of incredible people. And I really love and believe in what we do. So there's the highs way offset the lows, but there are times where most all my friends in Madison are like real adults with real professional jobs and have to wear real clothes and do real things. And on one hand, I'm like, I lasted at a desk job for quite literally, I lasted there for 3 weeks and I thought I was getting fired. It ended up being a promotion. I ended up saying, I'm sorry, I'm quitting. And then for the last couple days, I sold some artwork out of my cubicle, and that was peace. I'm out. So yeah, there is the artistic side, which I would love in theory to just take photos. Doing all the admin, the management, time on email, editing, those things can also definitely be a grind, but the trade-off is far worth it.
So you mentioned like 6 to 18 months out. Is that because obviously people are like, hey, I'm going to get married in the year 2032. Will you
Yes.
photograph my wedding? And is that kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
People are, I mean, more power to them for being such good planners, but we've had a couple people actually write and try to reserve a date. And on the inquiry form, it was just their one name. And I was like, oh, tell me about your fiance. They're like, I'm not in a relationship. They just wanted to secure us for a date in a future time. I was like, that is flattering. And I'm sorry, like, we're not signing a contract with you. Like,
Right.
I don't know, that didn't feel right. So there's some people will plan quickly. Like they'll be like, hey, we're just going to do this quick elopement in a couple months, but then other people are way far out, and it changes
Yeah.
all the time.
I think I've read that you have you limit the amount of like work that you take on,
Yeah.
and kind of, is that also a constraint that you've built into your business? And maybe talk about why you built that in.
Yeah. For sustainability, mentally, physically, enjoyment wise, we early on, we would take just every wedding that came our way. And I think that was the right approach. I think you have to do that. And in many ways, I would still love to do as many as physically possible. In 2012, we did a year-long road trip, so we tried to hit every state, and we were raising money for a safe home in Honduras, and that year was incredible, and it was terribly exhausting, and so from that point, I think we ended up photographing 42 weddings that year in however many states in a few countries. We're like, we need to kind of scale this back to a sustainable path so that we can do this and enjoy it year after year for the next 10 years or however long we're able to. And then now that, especially with having young children, they have soccer tournaments, they have basketball tournaments, they're active. In as much as I love work, it is not the only thing that I enjoy. And so there's a friend very early on said, like, if your focus is just to maximize income, probably shouldn't be an artist, probably shouldn't be a photographer. Like, there are other things that you can do. And so you just really need to find what works for you. And so for better and for worse, I would say my career aspirations have always been kind of low. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't need a whole lot to feel content and happy. And what is an extra X amount going to allow or provide? And we are still time, I guess, to take a pivot is the most valuable thing. And so anything that infringes on that more than necessary, I'm trying to be better about protecting.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. Like, I own my own business for a long time as well, so I know that the prospect of no customers, no
Yeah.
clients coming through the door, or that tap drying up is real and it's stressful.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that.
You're not guaranteed anything. Like anytime somebody
No,
writes, I'm like, oh, that's incredible. That's such a gift. And then if they book us, even more so. But
yeah,
yeah, that angst is real.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, I think that you've talked a lot about already just the interpersonal, the relationships that you build with your clients. What's the best part of that? Like, do you have any instances or stories where you've developed relationships with people that you've shot their wedding or anything like that? Like, it seems like that's such a huge part of what you bring to the table. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Totally. Yeah, there are plenty of people and couples that I can think of where they have become friends, where we will routinely grab dinner. Our kids have gotten to know their kids later on. Um, yeah, that side of it. There's even a couple like mothers of brides who will occasionally just text and check in. One this past year, um, when we first talked with them about booking, she asked who my favorite photographer is, and I said Sally Mann is up there as one of my favorites. And right after her daughter got married, she sent me a signed Sally Mann memoir. It was like that, the thoughtfulness of that parent, like she should be understandably thinking about any number of different things before, during, and after a wedding. And the thoughtfulness and consideration on display was just super flattering and encouraging. So yeah, I generally genuinely feel just a deep gratitude and affection for the people we work with. And I guess it's not good podcast material because we don't have the like salacious story of like the big blowout or freak out. It's like they're genuinely lovely people, and that usually begets further lovely people. So like most all of our work comes from word of mouth and referrals. We haven't I think we did one paid advertisement like many, many years ago. I finally gave in to the knot because they kept on calling. I was like, you guys need to stop calling. I'll just do a dumb ad. And it did nothing. And from that point forward, we've just been solely, yeah, word of mouth and referrals.
Well, I think that probably speaks very well of you and Michelle and how you run your business and how you interact with your clients. So that's very cool. Let's maybe move on a little bit. You mentioned COVID
Yeah.
and that kind of tanking your wedding photography business, and that Good Lion Golf was in a way kind of born out of that or shaped out of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us like the origin story of Good Lion Golf?
Yeah. So, like a lot of people in COVID who were cooped up and had time on their hands that was newfound, I have long been a golfer, have always enjoyed golfing. First job was at a golf course when I was 12, would dislodge the range balls early in the morning from the fence in the mud, which I now have new gratitude even for my mom driving me at 5 in the morning. It was a 5 to 10 shift on Saturdays, so bless her. But yeah, I was golfing with a college roommate outside of Chicago and had surprisingly kind of a decent round going. And there's this hole where he was like, absolutely do not try to go for it. I was like, what are we doing? I'm not on tour. I don't bet. Let's just let it go. And so I took out a driver, hit it well, but could not see at all where it went. And I turned and looked at him and said, Taylor, was that safe? And he goes, no, Johnny, it wasn't safe, but it was good. And it was as though the sky parted, inspiration just shot straight down because I had just finished reading Narnia to the kids. And that's the most well-known famous passage of like, is he a safe line? No, but he's good. And a couple weeks later, we're driving down to Savannah to see my wife's sister. Whole ride to Savannah and just mulling over this concept of something being good but not safe. Whole drive back, same thing. So that was really the inception and birth of it, was to create and introduce concepts, materials, clothing that are for all purposes good, and in the context of golf, not safe. So the first thing we did was a denim hat. So we're like, they make you take off jeans. I have no problem with that. I don't want to see people in cutoff jeans either. Golfing, I get it. But let's get a hat out there. Like, you can have a cool, clean denim hat. They're not going to make you take that off. And we made a ball marker on a gold necklace, and then the jumpsuit that was meant for golfers instead of caddies, because caddies don't ever get enough love. So those were kind of the first concepts. And then for the last, 4 years, Masters weekend, that is when we launched. We've just been mulling. It feels like we're just turning this diamond or whatever stone and just taking it from different perspectives, but it's all oriented in that good is greater than safe concept and mantra.
And when you try and or when you apply that, so it seems like there's a couple different things coming together. One is a little bit of subversion and kind of counterculture reaction to golf at being stodgy and kind of old and white and all of those things.
Yeah.
But then there's also this concept of good is greater than safe. Those two things, they're not like, I don't necessarily see them as opposed to each other, but they don't necessarily fall super in line. Well, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, they kind of do. But maybe talk about like
Yeah.
where your head is at with like the relationship of that, like, because there's certainly in reading about it and knowing about it a little bit, like a strong drive to be a little bit of a pot stirrer, a little bit of, counter or like subvertive and things like that. But then there's also this idea of being good and kind of inclusive and those types of things.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that is the counter. Anyway, I'll let you talk.
No, you're good. I feel like I've been a bit rambly at points. I can talk about all of these categories ad nauseum. So at any point you can just mute me or like, like
No,
mention stuff.
there's a reason that I want you to talk. That's
Well,
the whole goal here.
so I guess there is an element of subversion, but it is not without intention. It's not to just be like, oh, we're gonna like smash a window to smash a window and like play in the shards. It is
Yeah.
looking at generally what's been out there or proposed in the like overall culture of golf is what I will say a uniform. That one time my wife and I were at a golf course, and she quite literally on her own just looked around and said, Johnny, why is everybody dressed the exact same? And I too scanned, and it was like white curved brim hat, white polo, white belt buckle, khaki shorts. And they all looked like they had just escaped a cult in Cabo. And I was like,
Right.
what? Why? Like, this is the most varied game in the world. It's never the same. The courses are never the same. There's a huge range of people who play. Why? Why do we have to fit into this neat, tidy category while also being respectful? Because then I would say, on the other hand, the counter movement is kind of then this like loud, brash, fratty bro culture. I'm like, hard pass. Not for me. Don't like that. Don't want to be doing keg stands on the course. Like, I don't get that angle or aesthetic of wear neon orange pants and a banana print shirt. No, thank you. So it's like, what's a middle path of wearing something that has some meaning, that has some intention? And not to say that they don't. I'm not meaning to say that they don't have their own rationale or reasons, but I didn't necessarily see a place where father of two, somebody who doesn't golf as much as I would like to, has something that'd be comfortable that stands for something and isn't out there in abundance. So I don't see any desire or interest, both with photography and with Good Lion. It is the least interesting thing in the world to me to just keep regurgitating the same things over and over. There's too much of most things already. Like, there arguably doesn't need to be more clothing in the world either. So that's not lost on me, which is why the only reason that I think it makes sense or why I care about it so much is because it goes beyond the clothing. Like, the message transcends clothing. The clothing's a vessel, and like a denim jacket, you're not going to see on the course, and that's okay. And the reasons for denim jackets not being allowed historically are pretty whack. So like, let's try to move in a better direction where instead of drilling down into this is the cool club or this is like has to look a certain way, it's expanding it to say, like, let's make a wider net to have more people feel seen, feel known, not feel overlooked, not feel misunderstood. And having grown up around golf for however long and worked at a number of courses, and I guess present day, I have yet, with maybe a couple exceptions, I've yet to walk into a pro shop where I think that that is what I find interesting or compelling or different. And there's just not a ton of uh, departure from this very narrow lane. And if it's not this narrow lane, it's like this other category that, again, I just don't really resonate with. So I guess it's like, yeah, I could go.
Yeah, like how do you like, because obviously there is like you said, an intention, and there's um a philosophy or a mission, or like an understanding around what you're trying to do with Good Line Golf, because it's so outside, because there's such a narrow band of what is acceptable in golf,
Yeah,
and you're not inside of that.
yeah.
How do you go about, again, this goes to like a business question of like, okay,
It's not a good model.
I not a good model.
Not a
Yeah,
good model.
I believe I believe that there are probably more people than one might assume who are interested in these types of things, interested in responsible clothing, interested in, like designs that are not conventional and are a little off kilter or whatever, or more have a different aesthetic.
Yeah,
Um, how do you find those people? Like, how have you gone about finding those people?
that's the question. And that has been the most difficult thing. It's been interesting because the people who connect with it, people seem to either connect with it and get it or they don't. And people
Yeah.
who connect with it and get it are like in. They're passionate, they care about it. Just last night, there's a guy in Miami who's like, really need that denim jacket and I need it overnighted. I'm like, I'm eating dinner. Like, I'm about to go to golf league, whatever. So I finished dinner, ran to the UPS store and overnighted this denim jacket to Miami so it'd be there today. And that was super cool. I was like, that was
Yeah.
a first, and he wanted it. I'm like, thankfully had one and could go get it to him. But I think once thus far, to back up, our approach has purely been interpersonal, relational, organic growth. I've had some cold calls. Generally, they don't go well. I've met some people randomly and a relationship or a rapport has developed. But a lot of the time, there's not a grand business plan or strategy. And for better and for worse, we've had any number of different people approach us or call and they're like, hey, this is the industry standard of ad spending. This is the industry standard of like social media presence. I'm like, nope, I like can't. Social media is its own can of worms for me. Ad spend is its own can of worms. Like, I would rather just kind of slowly, organically hustle and grind and grow this. And it's, I guess, applying some of our photography business model of like has a similar slow, sustainable growth. And it's taken a long time. And there's still not this like entire security surrounding it. So I guess like if total security is the goal, you probably wouldn't go into entrepreneurship, artistry, creative
Yeah,
endeavors. So again, that's like perhaps the good but not safe move is to like, this is the path we're going to take, industry standards be damned. And it's discouraging plenty of times. Like there'll be encouragement and discouragement hand in hand, side by side, skipping along throughout the day where like we'll see something come through where last week, University of Wisconsin, we made these red denim driver covers for them. Cannot believe that happened. That's absolutely wild to me. I will ride that for a long time. And then as I like close that email, I open up an email saying like, no, we do not want your driver covers in our pro shop. I'm like, okay, I get it.
okay.
That's fair. But
Yeah,
like you can quite literally have these things side by side at all times. And so trying to maintain this greater understanding or meaning behind it is then what allows, at least for me, to weather a lot of the like, no, because you hear no, and I don't get this, and why are you doing this, and do you want to see it grow all the time? And
I'm sure. Yeah.
it's fine. Like it's, I think, generally well intentioned, but it's what it is.
Yeah, you mentioned the University of Wisconsin. I saw that. You also have a relationship with golfer Bobby Stricker,
Yeah,
is that right?
yeah,
What's like what's that relationship like? What is there? How did that come about? And like where is that something that you want to do more of? Partnerships with pro golfers, those types of things?
totally. Yeah, so a couple, so it's now a couple years ago, I just sent her cold email because she's local. Her family is a powerhouse in Wisconsin. They're well regarded, people of character, just big fans of who they are. And we don't have like my college friend Taylor, he and I were the original two with Good Lion. And as we slowly started to try to expand our reach and grow, felt like it'd be very important to have the perspective and input of a woman, of a professional golfer, of somebody who knows what is even functional to wear on a course, which we still have yet to really make that many functional things. But it was just having that kind of that input felt like it would be important. So the first touch point was just if she would hear me out on Good Lion even being in existence and if we could give her some things. And fast forward a little bit, we had another conversation. I was like, hey, we can actually give you some patches or some things to like sew on to what you're actually wearing, or we could actually make some clothing for you. She's like, I'd rather that. So then we made a collection just for her. Fast forward then to this past summer, we formally brought her on as one of the partners. So she is the fourth partner. One of my childhood friends who's based in Florida right now, he was number three. So yeah, she has been an incredible lift and encouragement and help in terms of spurring things on and challenging things and introducing new ideas and giving good feedback and pushback on all of it. So yeah, it's been an absolute treat getting to know her and Izzy and the family.
And then so moving forward, is that like just trying to get a beat on Good Lion in terms of do you want something like, hey, we're sponsoring, 5 tour pros or whatever, like is that a goal or is it more like grassroots or both?
I don't know. I think there's a part of me that thinks it would be if a tour pro would wear a par won't save you hat. Good, great, awesome, done, sold. Let's do it. I don't know if that will ever happen, but that'd be cool. Denim driver cover feels like the most possible of like, let's just get that on your club in your bag. We don't have a budget to pay people, so that'd
Yeah,
have to be out of like the goodness of Scotty Scheffler's heart, where he's like, you know what, you guys, that golf shirt that says golf shirt, I need that golf
that's it.
shirt.
Yeah.
Here you go, Scotty. Take as many as you want. I can see it going any number of different ways. We this summer are working with a couple tournaments where we did make some driver covers for the tournament. There's a couple of those happening. Bobbi does wear some good line when she's out playing. The UW team is going to have the driver covers, and we have a couple pro shops that carry our stuff. So if we could keep on getting into more pro shops and just in front of the right people in a way that is personal and connective, that would be the goal. I've also thought, like, in as much as it'd be cool to see a tour pro wearing it, it'd be awesome to see someone in the dunk contest wearing a good is greater than safe jersey. Like it, I guess the moonshot, very high concept, lofty view of all of it is that the good is greater than safe origin, mantra, foundation does transcend golf. So it could and very likely apply to really any other sport, any other endeavor, skateboarders to snowboarders to some of you playing pickleball. Like you can tear your Achilles in pickleball. That is not safe, but pickleball is good.
Yeah.
So there are
Yeah.
all sorts of applications that I guess, you know, maybe it stays on the course. Maybe golf is the launching point. We've systematically even started to the keen eye phase out golf on some of the shirts. So it's now like a focus on good lion and then good is greater than safe. And that would
Yeah.
be more of the direction which I don't know if broadening that scope helps or if that dilutes it. Again, we don't have like brand strategy marketing backgrounds. I at
Yeah.
Augustine and Pascal in college and got very confused about life. So it's just figuring things out as we go and seeing what works and what doesn't, and trying to have it be something that's an outflow of something that we care about rather than like, oh, the general public cares about this. Let's give them what they want. Because
Right.
I don't, again, think that's the right flow of idea or information. It's like, this is something that's interesting and compelling. I love it and find it maybe kind of funny or maybe kind of interesting and cool. And if you do, great. And if you don't, I don't know. I that there's no control over how people respond to things.
You talked a little bit about in different interviews or different things like that, kind of how therapy has impacted you, impacted your life, and how you approach things and move through the world. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how that has impacted your life and where you feel like that has brought you?
Yeah, Kendall. Also a great question. Goodness, I yes, have had multiple different seasons in life where that became just very abundantly clear that that was an appropriate step and movement toward growth and healing and whatever else was required. So I don't even know if this was most recently. I guess there were two recent times. One was in COVID where it was a virtual therapist, and she basically, I kept on going over and over about how like I'm in this mud pit and I feel like everything around me is muddy and I can't get out of this mud pit and I don't want to be in this mud pit. And I just kept on going on and on, rambling about the mud pit. And she's like, well, have you ever thought about getting out of the mud pit? And I was like, no, I hadn't thought about that. It's a very,
Oh,
very simple action step to like, hey, acknowledge it. Cause I think there was a season of life then in particular where I felt like my reality was not necessarily being understood or acknowledged by anybody else. And it was hard. It was a really hard season. And so I was so desperate for other people to understand how hard it was that I was like, look at this mud bath, come in the mud pit.
right.
Instead of thinking like, hey, maybe you just need to get out of the mud pit and like find ways to do so that are maybe things that you haven't tried or done before. Um, another, so that was very helpful to just try to get out, do it. I know it's not as simple as then like you just are able to emerge from said mud pit. But another time recently, uh, I had probably a 4-year break, and then a year or so ago, went to meet with the guy in person, and for the first hour, I can't believe he had me back, but I quite literally just cried. Like, I went to open my mouth and it was just boom, gone. And I since being married and now having kids, I'm like a weepy, weepy, weepy man. Like, it doesn't take a lot. It can be a commercial, it can be anything. Um, so that was great. Like, that even that process of releasing whatever that pent up stress or anger, fear, whatever was helpful. And he had a very good word that I guess it involves some specific things that I don't need to cover because it's other people. But he was asking me, he was like, "So do you want to do this thing?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Do you want to do that thing?" He's like, "Absolutely not." He's like, "What do you want for your wife to experience in this?" I was like, "I want her to be able to do X." And he's like, "What do you want for your kids in this situation?" I was like, "I want my kids to be able to do that." And he's like, "Let that be your focus. Like, don't let it be on your wants. Think about the wants of people you love. And what do you want for them?" And that was again this like almost so simple perspective shift of like, if I am only thinking about my wants, I will be crushed immediately. And they are like, what is the Steinbeck quote of like, man has an appetite that heaven and earth cannot fill? And it's like, I have all sorts of things that I would love to see happen. And I need to shift that focus constantly, daily, being reminded to like direct that out toward, well, what do I want for them? What do I want for somebody, for my friends, for my family? So yeah, I could give you a ton of examples of moments where in college, my counselor, they had a free counseling center. It's like, well, worst case scenario, I go to the counseling center and find something's off. I need to have it addressed. And I say, best case, I get it addressed. Worst case, they're just like, you're good. You don't need to come back. And sure enough, I ended up seeing this counselor for about a year. And he, during one of the sessions, was like, "You are so existentially anxious and angry." I was like, I am. I am. That actually felt liberating to have a name for it. And there's a whole process in my 20s and into my 30s where I then wanted that to change. Whereas, like, I don't want to be existentially anxious or angry. I don't want to care about all of these things in the way that I do. And through a whole other process, there's this like, no, that is what allows you to do what you do and care about what you care about and listen to the music you do and read the books that you do and have the opinions and hot takes and whatever. Like, if you just remove, for me, that existential angst, anger, anxiety, whatever, you like become a flattened shell of a person. So not to lean too heavily into that, but to allow it to also inform and imbue what I do.
That's some wisdom right there, man. That's awesome.
And
Hard earned, I can tell. Hard earned. Yeah. Okay, well, let's maybe shift and give you an opportunity. We talked about this a little bit, but give you an opportunity to ask me, our listeners, a question,
yeah,
and we'll see where that goes.
well, I'd be curious, Kendall, because you're a man of many talents, many pursuits. And we go, for the listeners, I think we first crossed paths, it must have been when I was in college.
Yeah, it was probably close to
Oh, maybe.
25 at 30 years ago. So, like it was a while ago. Not, I don't want to age you there. So
No,
sorry.
that's fine. I surely had a buzz head and was wearing Dickies top to bottom. Um,
Yes,
but
sounds
I'm
right.
curious how you have tracked your artistic arc evolution and growth to being in the position where you are now, and if you could have anticipated those steps in between.
Oh, that's interesting. Um, whew. My artistic journey, creative journey has been a little fraught, I would say. I studied art in college, painting and printmaking. And then I kind of, after college, did it a little bit, but then I was like, what's the point? Why am I doing this? This feels very kind of selfish and like I'm just creating art. What does that mean? Why do I want to do that?
Sure.
And so I kind of just left it for a while, and I still like drew some and things like that. But I really, I think, tapped into the creative side of things that I did at work. So I got into web development and design and things like that. And so I kind of applied my creativity to that. And that was interesting because when I tell that to some people, they kind of get a big question mark above their head about like, how is like coding and painting similar? And the way that I think about it, or the way that it has been for me, was it's kind of trying to solve problems, trying to take something that I want to make, want to do, want to portray, and do it, whether that's with a paintbrush or that's with lines of code. And so I really try to tap into that. And that felt interesting, exciting to me for a while. But recently gotten back into drawing, painting. I've been taking this life drawing class. So it's like there's like this, it's definitely like peaks and valleys. But I think thinking about creativity and again, part of why I started this podcast was like, okay, the world is falling apart, around us, and the connections between human beings are more fraught and more distant than ever. Why should a person like me start a podcast?
Sure.
And I kind of came to the conclusion it's to be creative, to
Yeah.
have conversations with people like you and the other guests that we've had, and that connection and creativity is what it's all about. It kind of like the idea of creativity and those types of things tracks through from long, long ago into various different paths and avenues. But I think that the creative spirit has been there all along.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I don't know if it does.
Oh, it totally does. I just think it's fascinating that best laid plans just often get erupted and imploded pretty
Yeah.
quickly. And so what's the role of then being adaptable and resilient and not giving up? Because like there it would be
Yeah.
in the same way that people would be like, hey, there are a bajillion clothing brands out there. I had a former client actually tell me, he's like, he had started a successful clothing brand. He's like, you're on the shores of the Atlantic yelling into a 50-mile-per-hour headwind with waves crashing around you and seagulls squawking, and you're yelling and nobody can hear you and nobody cares what you have to say. I was like, it's like a very clear picture. I got it, and I'm going to do it anyway. Like,
Right.
to
Yeah. You've got
me,
to.
like, I'm not doing this to be Under Armour. Like, I'm not doing this to be whatever. Like, this is just
Yeah.
something that I care about and want to do.
Right.
Um, so that's I love that you have just continued taking steps forward, maybe sometimes sideways, but finding your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Like trying to follow that creative impulse, whatever shape that takes, I think. In a previous episode when I was talking with Rob Bell, we talked a lot about that, about like make the way you make your coffee is a creative act, and different things like that. So it's like there's creativity and there's ways to live in a full, vibrant, creative way that it doesn't necessarily have to involve oil paint or photography or whatever. It can just be the way that you live. So
100%.
yeah. um Awesome. Well, Jonny, where can people learn more about Good Lion or Paper Antler?
Yeah.
What do you want people to know?
Well, Paper Antler is on the World Wide Web and it's on Instagram, though we historically have not been a great follow because we don't really post a whole lot, though I'm trying to be better about that. And then for Good Lion, it's Good Lion Golf, also on the internet. And then we have an Instagram page for that I keep on threatening to pull the plug on, but for the time being, it is still there. So that's those are probably the best ways. And we send out emails if you're more of an email person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I will link all of that up in the show notes. Jonny, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's great to reconnect with you. Great to hear what you've been up to,
Yeah.
and wish you all the best and success and fulfillment in your life.
Thank you so much. You too. And congrats on the podcast and everything you're doing.
Thanks, man.
All right. Peace.
Want to thank Johnny for coming on the show. Great to chat with him. If you're interested in the different things that we talked about today and the different things that Johnny's up to, please check him out at paperantler.com or goodliongolf.com and get more information there. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, share with all of the people that you know, every single one of them. Reach out to them and tell them how much you love So Many Questions. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care.